Good morning. Welcome to the Windsor Star News Cafe. I'm Don McArthur here with Dylan Kristy and our special guest, Denise Ghanam. She's running in Windsor's Ward 1.
Good morning.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Well, first, let's just kick it off. What are you hearing at the doors, and what are some of the main issues that are happening in Ward 1?
Okay, well, probably the two things that I'm hearing most at the door. The first is about flooded basements, and that's certainly been a concern in South Windsor. And the second issue has to do with the traffic problems on Cabana Road, concerns about the proposed bike lanes on Cabana, and how that's going to impact with the traffic congestion that's already there.
Excellent. Well, so there's a lot of candidates. We've had a few on already, and that seems to be the pressing issues, the ones that they're kind of bringing forward. What sets you apart? What kind of makes you the best candidate for the job?
Well, I think it's a number of things, really, Dylan. I think it's the fact that I bring a background with some governance experience already. I've served on the board at St. Clair College. I've been the chair there for a couple of years. I've been the president of the Human Resources Professional Association. I've served as the chair of the school council. So I have that experience of working with a team of people in a decision-making body, knowing how to set policy, knowing how to think strategically, knowing how to make some of those tough decisions. So I think that experience is one of the things that none of the other candidates really brings to the table that I do. And then I think the second thing is I have a pretty interesting background. I always joke and say to my kids, don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I've had a number of different job experiences. Worked in the automotive sector, in commercial banking as an account manager. Run my own management consulting firm right now. I've taught business at the university, so I bring all of that solid knowledge of how a business operates, the financial expertise that goes with that, and certainly the experience that you get working in a large organization and dealing with people at all those different levels. So I bring all that experience to the table as well.
Excellent.
Okay. Now, you've ran it, I think, at least twice now for the Federal Conservatives in Windsor-Tecumseh.
I did.
A pretty good showing for a Conservative in these parts, I would say. And I guess is there two questions. A, are you still a Conservative, a card-carrying member? And B, what are the differences sort of between knocking on the doors like in Ward 1 running for council and running federally?
Well, I certainly hold to the conservative values, particularly when it comes to fiscal and economic policy. I mean, that is how I view things. I prefer smaller versus larger government. I prefer to keep taxes low. I prefer to ensure that there's good value for government money that's spent. So, I mean, that's the conservative perspective that I bring. What's different about running at the municipal level, of course, is that you don't have those direct political connections. And so it is much more about who you are as a person and the background and experience that you have. So having been somebody that's lived in South Windsor for 27 years, raised a family there, served in the military, been involved as a business owner, volunteered on countless community groups and, done fundraising. So all of those things that connect you into a community. I direct the choir at our local church. Some of those kinds of things. That grounding in the community and that grounding in that neighborhood is what certainly makes me, connected to Ward 1. And that's very different than when I ran at the federal level.
Okay, and still a member?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. In terms of the basements, one of your opponents, Francis, has floated a plan, I guess to use that term, to sort of offer loans so people can sort of fix up their basements. Do you agree with that sort of a thing, or is it all more about the other end on let's just fix this infrastructure and get it right and end the problem once and for all?
Yeah, I think we don't really need another Band-Aid approach to fixing it. We need to have a focused approach, and I think what people have heard me talk about, of course, is we need the short-term, the mid-term, and the long-term focus. So short-term, we need to get people to take advantage of the downspout disconnect so we can reduce some of the volume that's going into the sewer system. Mid-term, we need to do some of the ongoing renewal and upgrading and repair that's required, and then long-term, strategically investing in some expansion and improvement to the sewage system because it hasn't kept up with the development in that part of the city.
Excellent.
We got to ask you this. I mean, we had Eddie Francis on here yesterday. He offered a couple of endorsements, and to no one's surprise, he endorsed his brother in Ward 1. I mean,
shocker.
Yeah, exactly. It is a shocker. I mean, does that matter? Does it upset you in any respects? Well,
I read what he said in terms of endorsing his brother, and I can agree that Freddie is young, and that's pretty much about where it stops. Certainly in terms of, his plan, we talked about it being a bit of a Seinfeld plan. It's a whole lot of talking, but with not much actual depth or concreteness to it. And I invite him when I teach business strategy, if Freddie would like to come and sit in on my class when I do the session on how to build an effective plan, because you need to have assessment of viable options. You need to have costed out. You need to have looked at the resources that are required. You need to have assessed implementation issues. None of that's in his plan. Just because you print it on glossy paper and fold it over a couple times doesn't make it a plan.
Well, there was this whole sort of Grand Mayor's ditch thing that I know some people in the newsroom were shaking their heads like.
Well, I think beautifying the Grand Mayor's ditch, if that's what he would like to spend taxpayers' money on, I think from what I've heard at the door that people would prefer us to spend our money on ensuring that the ditch remains viable so we don't have any more sewer backups, and certainly a number of other infrastructure issues that I think are far more pressing. We have an $800 million identified infrastructure deficit. So I don't think we need to be adding any more items to the list, particularly something that doesn't have a lot of, in my opinion, value added.
Okay. Auditor General, where are you on that?
I would like to see the role of Auditor General reinstated. I think that it's critical in terms of the transparency it gives to taxpayers, and it goes back to that concern where I come from about wanting to ensure that there's value for money spent, and I think an Auditor General role helps to ensure that that happens. It's that oversight, it's that third-party separate and independent overview. And I think that that's critically important to make sure that taxpayers are getting good value for their dollar.
Excellent. Well, are you going out? Are you knocking on doors? Do you have many more to hit? How's that campaigning going?
Well, I've got to about just shy of 6,000 so far. So
that's incredible. Like, Canada's coming to say that, but when you actually stop and think about it, like 6,000 doors?
It's a lot of time.
When you go, I mean, did you have to go at supper time, I guess?
No, it's interesting. Strangely enough, sometimes it just depends on the neighborhood you're in.
Yeah.
You can be there in the morning and you'll find all sorts of people home. I mean, people in Windsor, we work shift work.
Sure. Yeah.
We have lots of retirees in different pockets of South Windsor. So I haven't had a particular time of day that is best. But so yes, I knock in the morning, I knock in the afternoon, I knock in the evening, I knock on the weekends. So, I think the most important part is people want to know that you genuinely have some concern for them.
Right.
So the theme of my campaign is here to listen and here to lead. And I think if anything has been missing from the council over their past number of years, it's that good, effective consultation with stakeholders. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes decisions got made behind closed doors or without good public consultation, and I think that that's the wrong approach. So mostly what I do when I'm knocking on doors is I'm listening. So I'm not there selling myself. I'm not there touting my plan. I'm there to say, what's your concern? And once I know what a voter's concern is, then I can take that information and I'm building myself a good database of voter concerns that, once I'm elected, I'll be able to start helping to address those issues.
Okay. Well, the other obvious thing that's been missing from council is female representation. Joanne Gignac from Ward 6 is on council now, so does it matter? And in terms of the people that we're having on this show and the people that are running, it skews way more men than women. So does that matter, or is it important to get a female voice on council?
Well, absolutely. I think it is important. I mean, obviously half the population is female, so to have a woman's voice on council, you may be better able to relate or reflect some of those concerns as a constituent representative. But I also think one of the things that women tend to bring in their style of leadership, we tend to be a little bit more consensus builders. And I think that that's going to be very important with such a new council. I think me personally, doing the work that I do in management consulting, helping organizations with change, helping people manage when something is going wrong in an organization. So I have a great comfort level with that whole issue of transformation. And I think with a brand new mayor and at least 4 new councillors, that issue of managing the change is going to be really critical, and I think that's a skill that I can bring to the table so I can help us as a new council be more effective, hit the ground running a little more quickly, come together as a team. And I think that'll be very important and very valuable.
Okay. Well, we'd just like to give the folks who come on the show, 30 seconds or so to wrap it up, speak directly to the voters. So.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm Denise Ghanam and looking forward to being your representative in Ward 1. I bring with me, as I've mentioned, some good governance experience, a solid background in business with understanding of finance, how businesses work, with a background in the automotive sector and banking. And I certainly, from my long community service, have a great understanding of what's important in our community in Windsor. And I bring all that perspective to the table. I believe that's the Canadian way. We recognize people with skills and talents, and we reward them by giving them the opportunity to be a change maker. And I would like to do that rather than having somebody elected simply because they have a name that people recognize. I think voters are astute enough to know that it's the skills and the experience that's going to count when it comes to making hard and important decisions on their behalf, and I believe that I can do that. So I ask you for your support on October 27th. Vote Denise Claire Ghanam and help me be the next councillor for Ward 1.
Okay, Denise Ghanam, thanks for joining us. We're in the Windsor Star News Cafe.